Hello Algebra 1A, this video goes with our lesson on writing linear equations part 2. The example I'm going to look at is this question that asks write an equation of a line that passes through these 2 points. Now before we get into writing the equation of this line, there were 2 formulas that were introduced in these lessons on writing linear equations. One formula was y equals mx plus b. We call that one slope-intercept form because it has a spot for slope and it has a spot for intercept, hence slope-intercept. Specifically the y-intercept of the line. And then the other formula we have says y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. This formula is called point-slope form. Point-slope form because you guessed it, there's a spot for a point and there's a spot for a slope. So very creative names for these. Anytime you're asked to write an equation, unless you are given like a word problem where you can just write an equation without a formula, usually we're using one of these 2 formulas. In order to decide which one, you just need to match it up for the information that was given to us. So if you're given slope and y-intercept, you'd be using this one. If you're given slope and a point, you'd be using the second one. Now for a problem like this, notice they didn't give us either of these combinations. What both of these formulas have in common is slope. Anytime you're writing an equation of a line, you need to know slope. And notice in this problem, we don't have our slope yet. In order to find slope, there's one last formula I'm going to write. To find slope when you're given points like this, we've got the formula m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And those are the 3 formulas we have for this unit on linear equation. I promise there are no more after this. Looking at this problem, if we want to write an equation, and they're giving us 2 points, in order to write an equation, both of these require us to know the slope. And so since we don't know the slope yet, that would be our very first step. So using this formula here, we could use our 2 points we were given to help us find slope. If you're feeling really good about finding slope, you could just pause the video right now, try it yourself, and then come back and check to see if it looks like ours. If you're not feeling as confident, you can kind of work along with me right now. What I like to do anytime I'm using slope formula is I like to label my points. The biggest mistake I see students make with this is they put the numbers in the wrong spot. So an easy way to help you avoid that is labeling your 2 points. Points are always x and then y. So both of these would be x, y like that. And then those 1s and 2s just come from, this is, I'm going to call my first point. So since it's my first point, I can say x1, y1. This is my second point, so I could say x2, y2. It does not matter if you want to call this your first point and call this your second point. I'm just going with 1 and 2 because of the way they were given in the problem, but that is something you can flip around. So this could have been x2, y2, and this could have been x1, y1. Fun fact. Now that we've got our points labeled, we can go ahead and substitute into our slope formula. So instead of y2, look at what I'm doing. Instead of y2, it's going to be 6. Instead of y1, 8. And then instead of x2, we've got our negative 2. And then x1 is the number 2. And then after you substitute, the rest of this is just doing some of the math. So we could say 6 minus 8 is negative 2. Negative 2 minus 2 is going to be negative 4. Looking at this fraction, we want to check to see, can we divide? Can we simplify? 2, we can't do 2 divided by 4, but you can simplify that. It'll stay a fraction. If we divide 2 and 4 by 2, that'll leave us with 1/2. And then these negative signs, we know a negative divided by a negative is a positive, so my final answer would be a positive slope. It would be positive 1/2. Now just pausing here, let's kind of summarize what we know about this line. We know the line is passing through these 2 points, and now we've also found slope. Slope is 1/2, positive 1/2, so I know the line would be going up. But I still need an equation. It's asking for us to write an equation. So my equation is going to be something like y equals some numbers. So again, looking at the information we know points and we know slope. Which formula would we want to use to help us write an equation if you know points and slope? Points and slope. So it would be point slope form. So it's going to be, let me change colors. I bought more markers for this. It would be the formula y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. If we tried using our other formula, our slope-intercept form, we do know the slope, we know it's 1/2, but our problem is we don't know what the y-intercept is. These are both points, but they are not points where the line crosses our y-axis. 2, 8 would be somewhere over here, and then -2, 6, -2, 6, that would be somewhere over here. So we wouldn't be able to use slope-intercept form. The rest of this is just more substitution. My formula already says x1 and y1, so we can use this point. In order to use this formula, you just need to know a point on the line. So you don't actually have to use this point. You could use this point and change it to x1 and y1 and substitute that point into your formula. It's going to start off looking really different. It's obviously going to look really different because they're different numbers, but after you work through it and get it into slope-intercept form, it's going to end up being the same equation. Don't believe me? You are more than welcome to try both points at home. Looking at these 2 points, in my opinion, the one with the positive numbers looks easier. So this is going to be the point I choose to use in my formula. So when I go to substitute, it's going to say y minus y1, which is the number 8, equals our slope, m, which is 1/2, times x minus x1, which is the number 2. And then the rest of this is just changing it into slope-intercept form. At this point, you've seen a lot of times we don't leave our linear equations looking like anything but slope-intercept form. Like think back to when we were graphing linear equations. Lots of times if they didn't look like y equals mx plus b, we would go ahead and change them into y equals mx plus b. It's kind of just the easiest way to have these lines written. So something like this is an equation of the line. It says write an equation. We've written an equation, but lots of times this isn't going to be the final way we want our equation to look. So the rest of this is just getting this to go from something like that to y equals mx plus b. So one of the first things I notice about this formula is there are no parentheses in it. So in order to get rid of these parentheses, we would have to distribute. Because we're distributing, I'm just going to copy down my y minus 8. And then when I distribute my 1/2 to x, it'll just stay 1/2 x. And then 1/2 times 2. You can do like all the fraction multiplication off to the side, but 1/2 is actually a really easy fraction to multiply. It's just half of whatever this number is. So 1/2 of 2 would be 1. So I can write 1/2 x minus 1. And then the last step to get it to look like y equals mx plus b, I need y all by itself over here. So I could finish. Oh, you've got a glare. There's the -1, I'm sorry. I don't know how to fix that, I'm sorry. To get rid of the -8 and get y all by itself, we can finish up by adding 8 to both sides. Oh, you can really see that. Nope. Which would leave us with y equals 1/2 x, and then that -1 plus our 8 gives us plus 7 for our final answer. Maybe that's a little better. There's one last thing you can do to check your answer. You all know how much I love checking answers in math. When we say this is the equation of the line that goes through these 2 points, what being a linear equation, part of what it means is that it's going to correctly describe any point on the line. And what I mean by that is if you choose a point that's on the line and you substitute it into this equation, what it's going to say is going to be true. So kind of think back to like when we were checking solving equations. Like if you say x plus 2 equals 4, x is 2, when you substituted it would give you something true, like 4 equals 4. Same idea here. If this is the actual equation that goes through these 2 points, I should be able to substitute this point into this equation and get something true, like 10 equals 10 or 3 equals 3. Any point that's not on the line, if you substitute into this equation, would give you something that's not true, like 10 equals 5. So for example, I'll put my little check over here. I should be able to substitute both of these points into this equation. For now, I'm just going to pick one. I'm going to pick, you know what, I'm going to pick the one with the negative. We're going to pick negative 2, 6, and substitute it into this equation. Now, the main difference between this and when we were checking our one variable equations is there's going to be 2 numbers to substitute. So for this equation, instead of y equals, y is the number 6. So it would say 6 equals, and then I've got a half. 1/2 times our x, which I'm using this point, so my x would be negative 2. And then plus 7. That would give us 6 equals 1/2 times negative 2. Again, multiplying a half is just taking half of the number. So half of 2 is 1. But then since the 2 is negative, it would be negative 1. So we get 6 equals negative 1 plus 7. And then last part, negative 1 plus 7 is 6. So we get something like 6 equals 6. That is true. So it's just like a quick, easy way to check your equation. It would also work for this point too. If you wanted to check and try at home, you would see that it would also give you something that's true. I hope this video helped you understand this a little bit more. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out to us. We've also started doing the Zoom class meetings. I think the people who have attended those really have found them beneficial. Just bring any question you struggled with a little bit. Even if you ended up getting it right on the homework, I think just being able to talk through something can be really helpful and meaningful for you understanding it better. So we've just been using our Zoom meetings kind of like bring me your questions you struggle with and let's talk through them together. It's not new material, but it helps you, in my opinion, understand what we've been looking at a lot better. Or we also have the one-on-one tutoring, so I will also advertise that here. If you want just like one-on-one tutoring with me, you can call in or we can create a Zoom meeting for you and me to talk through some of your questions. That's also an option now. So lots of new things, and honestly, I would love to hear your voice and see your all's faces. I miss you all so much. I hope you're doing well and staying safe and healthy at home. And I will see you again soon, whether that be in another one of these videos or on Zoom. Hope you're all doing well. Thanks. Bye.